inherently, and I'm sure everyone knows this, that when you do the things you said you would do, you feel better about yourself. And that, it's not an easy answer, like I said, but it's the most powerful thing to taking control of your mental health. When I need, like, for example, there's a lot of people on medication for different mental health issues. A part of showing up might be, I don't want to take my medication today, but I know it makes me feel better. I need to do it. It doesn't have to be a sweaty hour-long kettlebell session or run. The hard thing can be sitting for 10 minutes in a meditative state and relaxing. The hard thing can be taking your meditation. The hard thing can be reaching out to a GP and going, I need help with my mental health.
And in this moment, I swear, we are infinite.
Let's do this! Come on! Mounting!
It's too damn hot for a penguin to be just walking around.
3, 2, 1, eagle!
Are these two doctors?
I'm afraid so.
And here we go.
Welcome to episode 6 of the Virtus podcast, season 2. I'm 100% sure that this is episode 6.
Attaboy.
Welcome. Today's episode, we're talking about mental health. You're with Lachlan Wallace and Simon Cooper.
Hello.
How you feeling, Loch?
Pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Nice walk this morning. Had a beautiful meditation at the beach. Sun was shining, birds were singing, bees were trying to have sex with them, as is my understanding. It was magical.
Well, what could you ask for?
That's a Bart Simpson quote. So some of my best work. Speaking of quotes, we decided we're going to kick off this podcast with a quote. How very original of us, but this is a quote that, upon further examination, turns out it's misattributed. Is that how you say it? Close enough.
Sure.
To Jim Carrey. Apparently he said something similar, but it wasn't actually his quote. But regardless, I'm claiming that it was Jim Carrey because there were too many articles about the misattribution. But this quote, I think, best articulates my personal view on mental health, and I think our view as a business on mental health. And I know you resonate with this pretty strongly as well. So we thought it would be important to kick this off with a quote. And I guess before we dive into that, I just want to preface this whole conversation saying that we are by no means experts. If you want behavior change and strength and conditioning, then yes, we are experts in that. But the mental health space is such a big rabbit hole. And I guess we want to talk about these things to bring it to the surface and to allow people a little bit more capability and capacity and openness in discussing this. But if anyone is struggling, is having any issues, call Lifeline 13 11 14, 24/7 crisis support. They exist and this is their tagline, I love it. We exist so no person in Australia has to face their darkest moments alone. So lean on your friends, lean on the people around you, but Lifeline, Beyond Blue, these are the places to the people to talk to when things are tough.
And I think this conversation that we're about to have is based on our own experiences, conversations that we've had with people within our community, our own kind of anecdotal evidence maybe.
Definitely.
But we'll be sharing a couple of stories and our own experiences and maybe some strategies that can help you. But as Locke said, if you need help, then there are resources and people out there who are experts in this sort of thing, and they exist for that reason.
Yeah, and we don't want to undervalue those anecdotal experiences, but we also want to know that there's levels above, and head to your GP, get a mental health plan. You can get a bunch of sessions for free. Go see a psych, all of those kind of things, because it will help you feel and do better. But the quote, so I believe depression is legitimate, but I also believe that if you don't exercise, eat nutritious foods, get sunlight, get enough sleep, consume positive material, and surround yourself with support, then you aren't giving yourself a fighting chance. That is misquoted Jim Carrey. So, Simon, what do you think when you hear that quote?
I think it's pretty powerful. I think it's powerful because it's almost simple things that we can do to make ourselves feel better. Like exercising, eating good food, going outside, sleeping enough, being around positive people. These are things that are easy things that we can do, and we can do them daily. And
they're all within our locus of control. That's the biggest
Yes.
takeaway for me. I think it's really important to know that depression and anxiety, these are chemical imbalances that many people have and many people struggle with. It's not anyone's fault that happens, but I think there's got to be a certain amount of ownership around mental health, around what you actually do with the part of that that's within your control. It's the free will debate. Like if there's 1%, 0.1% of your actions that are not predetermined, then it should be a non-conversation. Non-conversation. Should be aware of it, but there's also like, let's lean into what we can control. Otherwise, it gives something to blame. It gives something to pass the buck to. I think taking ownership is one of the pillars or cornerstones to having a strong relationship with your mental health. Yeah,
I think in health in general, right? Like
definitely
taking responsibility and ownership of what you can do. And like, I think coming back to this quote as well, there are things that are within your control that you can do, but I also love how it ends saying you need to give yourself a fighting chance.
Yes.
And that implies that there are things that are outside of our control, but if we focus on the things that we can do daily, the people that we can surround ourselves with, then that's going to put us in the best position that we can to move forward and have a positive relationship with how we feel.
Certainly. And there's going to be lots of little battles along the way. There's going to be good days and bad days and everything in between. But if we can lean on these things, I think none of these are the most important. But the surrounding yourself with support is, for mine, like we spoke about it last week, and I guess this is the intentionality of these podcasts is they each kind of flow into the next. And the energy generation conversation feeds directly into the mental health conversation, as does the building resilience conversation. So, but the people in place that we spoke about last week, if you're surrounding yourself with people who are doing good things, who have a positive outlook on life, the optimist basket rather than the pessimist basket, there's no doubt that you're going to feel those same ways and repeat some of those feelings, and you begin to emphasize the positive things that can come out of each day rather than the negative things, for example. And we all fall into the trap of those negative frames of mind. But if people in place, if we have places we can go and people we can talk to who help promote these great things, then that's going to be our normal, not the other way around.
Yeah. I think a lot of people that we've spoken to who have expressed difficulties with their mental health feel as though like the loneliness thing comes into it a lot, and not feeling as though they have the people around them to support them.
Certainly.
And loneliness, I actually did a little bit of research on loneliness, and one in Australia, this is research in 2018, 1 in 5 people express feelings of loneliness on a regular basis. That's on like a weekly basis. That's 20% of the whole population.
That's insane.
It's wild.
Yeah, I guess at the moment, like I had a couple of tough mental health days last week and a half ago.
Yep.
I just had a day where I was just sad. Like I didn't a couple of days around it, I didn't want to get out of bed and things like that. And I think that loneliness was what I was feeling. It's just we spoke about it last week again, but I'm such a people person a lot of the time, not having those conversations and hugs and high fives and handshakes and things like that, and to lean into the love languages, to a self-awareness play. Like my love language is physical touch. Not having those cuddles and high fives definitely impacted me more than I probably thought / let on.
Yep.
And I had that immense feeling of loneliness for a couple of days, and it was horrendous. And like I've got the girls, Lucy and KP and Taco here. Yep. So I have no reason to feel lonely, but not having those other layers of love and support that we built it with our community at Virtus, and I've got with the boys at footy, and the circles of friends that we've all got. I definitely felt that.
I think that's the thing. You can still be lonely or experience feelings of loneliness even though you are surrounded by people. You might be living with a family of 10, but still feel lonely. And it's more of like it's less quantity, maybe, and more quality. Like cultivating quality, genuine relationships in where you are fostering this connection. That's more important than being surrounded by people all the time. And I think that's almost like maybe a misconception or a misnomer about having being surrounded by people.
Oh, definitely.
Facebook and let's call it social medias, they're a perfect example of this. Like you can, on social media, you can have 1,000 friends or followers and yet not cultivate meaningful relationships with anyone.
And not actually connect with any of them properly.
Yep. And so I think like this loneliness or disconnection it's like a public health issue. And definitely. It's something that we need to address and be aware of so that we can begin to cultivate these more meaningful relationships.
Do you think it's propagated by social media?
I think it is not the cause, but it is, facilitated by that.
Like anything, there's ways we use it and ways we execute on it, which impacts the outcomes we get. What are the things that you think people can do better? And people as in us, what do you think we can do better to cultivate meaningful relationships on social media? And to come back to that quote, and I think that might be something we come back to throughout this conversation, is the consuming positive material is such a big part of that. How can we use social media to cultivate those feelings of connection and eliminate those feelings of disconnection? Yeah.
I think this conversation around what comes up for me here is the conversation around social media is like, let's zoom in on the actual interactions between people rather than the influence of social media as a whole.
Yep.
The interactions between people, I think social media needs to be viewed as a platform to connect because it has so much power and potential, right? Like we can connect with anyone in the world if we wanted to. The key is making that interaction something with substance. And I think, look, I don't know the answer to this. This is me just kind of.
Why don't you know all the answers?
Mate,
should know all the answers.
Well, if only, eh? But I think connecting with people who have similar interests or worldviews enables us to foster connection. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't connect with people who don't have different worldviews. I think that's also important. Mm-hmm. But having something that people can bond over
Finding commonality, even with people that disagree on 90% of what you agree on, is important.
Yep.
And I think external social media conversation, I think if anyone in the world we could sit down with and find commonality if you had a conversation for 20 minutes.
And that kind of leads into what I was going to say next, which is going into it with an open mind and a sense of vulnerability, which is difficult on social media because being vulnerable opens you up to criticism.
Yes.
But so this is why I think this is like a public health thing. It's like a social or a cultural issue where we need to facilitate this kind of change on a broader level. And it does start with one person. Like, let's not underestimate what each of us can do, but we all need to kind of approach it in a little bit of a softer way and be vulnerable in how you interact with people, which requires a level of bravery, in order for us to kind of show each other empathy and kindness.
Definitely. Yeah. Having the, the device in front of us and not seeing the person impacts that ability to show empathy and to feel empathy. And I think the word I've come back to in my head about 20 times while we've been talking is just intention. Is be intentional about who you're talking to and what you're talking about. And if you're on social media for the sake of being on social media, be intentional about how long you're on or about what you actually look at. And, the mindless scrolling leaves us vulnerable to, not the good kind of vulnerable, but it leaves us vulnerable to, going down the rabbit holes of the negative things. I'm sure everyone has had different elements of it throughout this time. Like, I'm someone that doesn't usually spend a lot of time on things that I don't like to follow on social media. My Instagram, for example, is heavily cultivated around, philosophy and strength conditioning and people doing good things. But I found myself maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, kind of leaning into the anti-maskers and the coronavirus as a hoax and the conspiracy theories, and purely because it interests me why people do what they do and why people believe what they believe. But I found myself like biting back on a few things. And I was genuinely like, I fell into that trap for a few days. I was kind of like, this isn't serving me. This is making me feel worse. I need to get out of this. And, there were things that I did to cultivate the positivity, and, it was all around intentionality. It was, okay, there's these few people that I'm maybe butting heads with that's not getting us anywhere. No positive thing is coming from this. Let's unfollow these people. And then it was, about a week and a half ago, I just removed Facebook from my phone. It's not going to be gone forever. It doesn't necessarily change anything, but it just changes the way I approach that social media bubble and how I'm feeling. My focus now is around what can I do to cultivate these positive feelings, and things like meditation and mindfulness and these kind of conversations, and my journaling and my reading. And if I do go on social media, what am I actually paying attention to? These are the conversations I'm trying to have with myself to bring that back to, am I benefiting from this or am I not?
Yeah, I think that's really important. Being really deliberate in where you direct your energy. And this comes back to the energy generation conversation. But yeah, being deliberate with what we surround, or let's say who we surround ourselves with, and what we expose ourselves to, is an effective way to cut out the negative things that are making us feel bad, and surrounding ourselves with more positive things which make us feel good. And good things make us feel good. So that's
and I think having the capacity to, and I wrote about it on Instagram this morning. So, and I think it's important to use these platforms for positive things. Like last week I shared some, I had a kind of those tough couple of days I spoke about before. I shared that because I think it's important to normalize these conversations. And the response I got was phenomenal. I had a big chunk of people reach out. Some I hadn't spoken to for a long time. Some I talk to really regularly. This morning, I kind of posted almost like an update, like here's a week later. And the two feelings were chalk and cheese. Like I genuinely remember feeling horrendous last week and meditating and teared up a little bit, and I was just sad. This morning I meditated after we went for a walk, and joyously happy, like, is the term I was using, like thinking about during the meditation. And I was just like, why am I happy? And I'm like, well, the focus for the last week's been around pulling myself out of that hole, but the individual focus has been just cultivating an indifference to that which is outside of my control. It was, okay, what can I do? What can I not affect or influence? And I just focused on what I could do. And again, tomorrow I might not feel that joyous level of happiness that I felt today, but that's fine. All the meditation was just an observation of how I was feeling.
Yep.
So I think cultivating a focus around, okay, what do I need to focus on to get me where I want to get to? And then two, being able to appreciate when you're in that mode. I love the "this too shall pass" quote. When things are magical, when things are going well, and like when you're feeling like I was this morning, and we had a great walk, and that'll pass. That feeling will pass. That feeling is impermanent. As much as I would love to feel like that forever, I can't. It won't happen. What I was feeling last week, same deal. This too shall pass.
Yep.
It's impermanent. So knowing that, and a quote or a part of a poem by Rainer Maria Rilke that I love is, "No feeling is final. Keep going."
Yeah. Which,
eventually a feeling will be final, but you'll be dead and it won't matter. So, but
yeah.
I love that. I love the idea around impermanence, and this too shall pass, and no feeling is final.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, and like you touched on a good point, it applies to good feelings as well as, or positive feelings as well as negative emotions. And maybe a lot of people who experience mental health challenges feel as though that this feeling won't stop. And that can be kind of amplified by a feeling of overwhelm because there's so many things outside of their control. Definitely. So, like you said, having a focus, something where you can direct your energy toward, is really important. And then coming back to that like loneliness thing, connecting yourself to a community, connecting yourself to other people who can kind of pull you out of that hole, or can help pull you out of that hole in the right direction.
Why do you think that's so important? And obviously, that's a loaded question, because we talk about community so often. It's something that we are, it's almost our number one value at Virtus, and it's the thing we're trying to cultivate around, but also, amongst and on top of everything else is a community of people that care for each other and love each other, and so that everyone has a place where they can love and be loved. Why do you think that's so important? And obviously, diving into the loneliness research that you did the other week was based around our intention as a business, right?
Yeah. Well, to give some context, I was doing research and trying to kind of nail down exactly what we were trying to do at Virtus. Like, yes, we are a gym, but like, what problem are we trying to solve? Not just for our members, but for community and society as a whole. And loneliness and disconnection was one of the things that I came to. And community is almost like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. When people come together, then positive feelings, positive experiences are just amplified, I think. And I think there's like maybe like a sense of magic in that can't really.
Oh,
I don't know if I can explain it, or I probably can't articulate it.
here's a quote for you: "Happiness is the only thing that doubles when shared."
Good. Yes. Yeah.
Put that on a t-shirt.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's just people. I think this is the thing. People who come together knowing that, like they're creating value for other people. They might come in for not selfish reasons, but because they want to be a part of something. But then as they kind of integrate into the community, it becomes less about them and more about the tribe.
Yes.
It becomes like a joint feeling of connection and happiness that they're contributing to.
Definitely. I think the idea around find a place where people care more about your goals than theirs. Yep. Like inherently you go, oh, well, like, why would I do that? But once you're in it and you realize that, okay, well, these 100 people really give a shit about what I want to achieve and how I feel and what I'm doing. That's an immensely more powerful route to take than if you went, okay, I'm just going to focus on my goals. Because you end up with all the momentum of all these people behind you. So the motivation conversation is irrelevant. The dedication and commitment conversation is irrelevant. And the suffering discipline conversation is irrelevant, because you just want to surround yourself with these people who genuinely give a fuck about what you're doing and how you are and where you want to get to, so that all of those negative feelings are counteracted. They're not eliminated, because they're still going to be there, but they're counteracted when you show up at 10 to 6 and there's 15 people that want to see you do good things. It's cultivated by knowing that you're going to have bad days, and there's going to be people who train at the same time as you, or people in your groups, or the coaches around you that are going to pick you up on those days, and knowing that that's okay, because there's going to be days when you're feeling top of the world where you can help the others get up. And it's almost this like faultless system of momentum giving that creates a snowball effect amongst the community of people just wanting to contribute and people wanting to do good things. And I think everyone, whether you know it or not, everyone wants to be a part of a community.
Agree.
If you don't necessarily feel that way, then maybe you haven't found the right community, or maybe you haven't lent into your community, because I think the most important part of community, and whether it's a tribe a couple of thousand years ago, or whether it's a small group that's centered around a common ideal at the moment, it's all around how can I contribute to these people, knowing that indirectly that'll come back to me. And you don't do it because it'll come back to you, but there needs to be selfish reasons for doing things. But there's a book by Peter Singer that talks about, like, is there such thing as true, it might be true philanthropy, or like true giving, because obviously there's a selfish reason for doing everything. I don't think it matters, personally, because if I'm doing something for someone else because it makes me feel good, then that's like double win.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a community is in a nutshell.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool. And a few things just came up for me there. One is around the momentum conversation, and something that we use in our team at Virtus quite often is the quote, or the saying that the best way to build momentum for yourself is to give it to others. And I think that's true. And if you I also think that inherently we want to help people. We want to help others. Like, I think it's almost like inbuilt into our DNA that we want to contribute to the tribe. And if we don't, then like it's a survival thing. If we don't contribute, then we're going to be cast out of the tribe, and our chances of survival is zero. So I think that's true.
Well, I'm listening to Sapiens for the 20th time at the moment, and
Good.
from an evolutionary perspective, it is completely true, because if we don't contribute, or if we're more disagreeable, then we're less likely to be a part of that tribe, whichever part of the world is, which means we're more likely to be cast out, and we're more likely to be eaten by a lion, or die of starvation, or be whatever it may be. So those attributes, the people that were more like that, those predispositions are more likely to have died out over the last. How long's the Earth been a thing? 6,000 years, is that right?
Oh, less maybe. I don't know.
I haven't read that book for a while.
Not an archaeologist,
So whatever, over the hundreds of thousands of years of evolution of the Homo sapien, those traits, the disagreeable, the not wanting to be a part of a community, those have died out in different ways. And yes, they come up in selfishness and things like that.
Yep. Well, that's like the next part. The being selfish guarantees our survival. And so, well, again, like if we look after ourselves, then we will survive. And so, like what you said about that philanthropy quote by Peter Singer is, I think that's got maybe a grain of truth to it as well, that inherently we all want, even maybe subconsciously, we want to look after ourselves first. We want to put our own face mask on before we put on others.
Yes. But from how do we move forward? How do we improve the way we live, and things like that? Then it's, once my face mask is on, once my oxygen mask is on, how do I look after other people?
Yes. And then it goes into like generosity and how we can help serve others and serve the tribe.
Definitely.
And the last thing that came up from before was closing off that kind of social media loop, is that communities, we have the opportunity now to build communities that are digital or remote. And they can still be just as powerful as in person.
Definitely.
And like we have the challenge now to try to make those interactions meaningful and try to build these communities in a different way.
Yeah, and that's the power and beauty of something like social media, is that we're able to cultivate those relationships virtually. Like, we've got people that we look up to in different parts of the world that we've never met, but we feel as though we could have conversations with them, and we have even talked about traveling to the other side of the world to go and meet them. Because we connected on social media, because we had a common interest, or a single person connection, or whatever. And I think the capacity for us to decentralize what social media has done over the last, how long's Facebook been around? 2007 or something? 2011? Those are two very different years. Who knows? It's not important. What the changes it's made has allowed that decentralized interconnectedness in the world happen. But I think there's two parts of that. One is, how cool is that? How beneficial and how beneficial can that be? But then there's also how much will it make us go back to community? And I think that's the next step of, whether it be business, or whether it be evolution, or whatever you want to use. But I think that us focusing and leaning into community over the next 15, 20 years will be, and almost going back to the tribe mentality, with an understanding that each tribe is connected on ways that we never would have been throughout history.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's exciting times. Let's shift a little bit and talk about how to cultivate positive mental resources and we've spoken about this a little bit in other podcasts, things like gratitude and hope and self-efficacy. In my Power of Change workshop, I talk about a concept called psychological capital, which consists of 4 main elements, let's call them. And the elements, you can remember them with the, what do you call it? Each of the elements spell out hero.
An acronym?
Acronym. I just had, my brain just did not work for a second there.
Welcome to episode 3 of the podcast.
An acronym spells out hero, and that stands for H is hope, E is efficacy or self-efficacy, R is resilience, and O is optimism. And if we can cultivate these positive mental resources, then that allows us to be, well, the concept comes from an organizational context. So it kind of relates to job satisfaction and effectiveness, but I think it can easily be translated to personal well-being. So do you have any sort of strategies in mind that can help us cultivate these mental resources?
I do. And I think mental health comes back to a lot about how you feel about yourself. There's obviously how you feel about the world. And I think I made a thing the other week, and I don't have it in front of me, but it was around circles of influence. And there's like 6 circles of influence. There's like universal, there's national, there's state, there's local, there's community, there's family and friends, and then there's you. And the only one you really have any influence over is yourself. There's the circle around you that you can have some sort of influence over, but ultimately it doesn't really exist. So to take the how you feel about the world conversation away, knowing you can't fucking do anything about it, or you've got it up, good from you.
For those on YouTube, you can now see the 6 levels of influence.
So I made this when I was going into that kind of deep, dark hole of conspiracies and people not doing the right thing and people complaining about masks and things. That I was very frustrated by that. But this is kind of like one of the things that I created to help me cultivate a thought process around, well, why am I feeling this way and what can I do about it? And if we understand these circles of influence, then the focus is on the self. And a big part of self is being able to depend on yourself. It's the integrity definition that Greg loves, and I also prescribe to it, is that integrity is doing what you said you would do when you said you would do it, which basically means that if I say I'm going to go for a run and I go for a run, then I'm going to feel wonderful about myself. And that's kind of a vote towards the person I want to be. I want to be dependable to everyone else, but I need to be dependable for me first. If I say I'm going to get up at 6 a.m. and I get up at 6:30, or if I sleep until 11, then I'm going to feel very differently about myself. Of course, there's the balance that we need to find between self-care and discipline. But I think that they support each other. And a quote that I saved yesterday that it rocked me when I read it is, we reward our good behavior with bad behavior and wonder why we don't make progress. So we do something really good and then we justify why we can take the foot off the pedal. Like we might go for a run and go, oh, sweet, I can eat something shitty now. Or we might go, oh, sweet, I went for a run yesterday, I don't have to go for a run today. So I think and it's a quote that we've repeated a bunch, but it's the hard decisions, easy life, easy decisions, hard life.
Yeah. If
we can continually show up more often than not, and there's a time to rest and a time to eat the fucking block of chocolate, and there's a time to Netflix binge. Yeah. But if the majority of the time we can show up and know what we're going to get from ourselves, then we are ultimately going to have a stronger, more resilient view of our own mental and physical health. so that when things are tough, we have the tools to break ourselves out of the negative headspace and to work out of it. And yes, the tools as in meditation or journaling or podcasting or talking to people or or exercise or whatever they may be. Everyone's going to have their own box of tools they can use. But I think what allows you to have a bigger toolbox maybe is just the discipline to do what you said you would do. And it's not an easy answer. It's almost like the hard route, but it's the one that gives you the most, that pays you back the most in compound interest down the track. There's nothing I like more than seeing Jocko Willink post his fucking watch at 4:30 his time every fucking day on Instagram and on Twitter. Like it's amazing how often, and again, this is just cognitive bias that I link it to when I should be going to bed. But every now and again, I'm like, I really should go to bed, and I jump on Twitter, I see his fucking watch, and it's sitting there right in front of me. I'm like, this guy's getting up at 4:30 every morning and getting after it. Yeah. What am I missing? And he's not special in the fact that his brain's wired differently, so that maybe he's. But he's not special in the fact that he can do that. He just does it because that's what he does, and that's the contract he's made with himself. And I guarantee you, he goes through ups and downs like everyone else. I guarantee he doesn't want to get up. I opened a gym because I love the gym, right? The last thing I want to do most days is train. The last thing I want to do most days is meditate. The last thing I want to do most days is go for a run. But I know inherently, and I'm sure everyone knows this, that when you do the things you said you would do, you feel better about yourself. And that, it's not an easy answer, like I said, but it's the most powerful thing to taking control of your mental health. When I need, like, for example, there's a lot of people on medication for different mental health issues. A part of showing up might be, I don't want to take my medication today, but I know it makes me feel better. I need to do it. It doesn't have to be a sweaty hour-long kettlebell session or run. The hard thing can be sitting for 10 minutes in a meditative state and relaxing. The hard thing can be taking your meditation. The hard thing can be reaching out to a GP and going, I need help with my mental health. It can be texting a friend and saying, hey, I'm not doing so great. Can we have a chat? The hard thing doesn't have to be physically painful. The hard thing can be as simple as sitting down and writing a page in your journal. It doesn't matter what it is. I guess what I'm trying to say is that we can build it up as this big mountain to tackle, but all you've got to do is start moving. No one feels worse once they've finished meditating. No one feels worse once they've taken their medication, depending on the medication. No one feels worse once they've reached out to their GP. No one feels worse once they've done the training session. It's just around convincing ourselves to do it. Yeah. And I know I talked a lot there, but unpack that for me.
Yeah, there's a bit to unpack there. Some of the things that came up for me were the conversation around systems, and we talk about that in the Systems for Success podcast episode, where you create the systems in your life that you can default back to when you feel in the dumps, when you feel bad. And these are the habits that you cultivate, and the things that you put in place to make yourself feel good. And if we can make that our default set of behaviors, then that's kind of half the battle a lot of the time.
Like I'm on a quote train today, but James Clear, we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems.
Yep.
These, to use Jocko as an example, the bloke gets up at 4:30 every morning and does his thing. He knows that's what he does. Everyone else knows that's what he does. I'm sure he doesn't do it for social media, but knowing that he's going to post his watch at 4:30 probably gives him that little nudge to get up some days.
Yep. That's it. So he's created a system of accountability that that
Exactly.
makes him do the thing.
Exactly. Like I post my journal on social media relatively regularly. I post my step streak relatively regularly. One I've been cultivating lately is my meditation streak. Like I intentionally post it on social media.
Mm-hmm.
Not part of it's validation. Like I go, hey, I did this thing. Check it out. How fucking awesome am I? But most of it's just, well, if more people know that I have a journaling, a meditation and a steps habit that I'm cultivating, more people know that. The day where I'm on 4,000 steps at 7:00 at night, and we're in lockdown and I've got an hour to go for a walk, those days I go, fuck, I better go for a walk at 7:00.
Yeah.
Or I'd better sit down and meditate, or I'd better write my journal. That they're systems, and it's like a contract with ourselves that I think we can all cultivate. We've just got to figure out, okay, what's something that I know I can do now, then show up and do it for 30 to 50 days, then add something on top of it. And then it's just a consistent thing.
And every person's system is going to be different. Every person's self-care routine is going to be different. And I think that's important as well to state that, like, it's all relative. What one person posts on social media is, well, it's just a snapshot of their life, and it's something that they want to show you. Like you said, it's like a validation thing. But also they're in a different stage of their journey. They have gone through, maybe they've gone through the same challenges at a different time in their life. Maybe they're going through completely different challenges, but it's all relative. And the comparison trap is something that we haven't spoken about, but that's again one of the social media detriments or negative things. But I think that's maybe another conversation.
I think the important part of that is to know that everyone is, what's the quote? Actually, keep talking. I'm going to find the quote.
Yes, everyone's routine is going to be different, and being kind to yourself and having a level of self-awareness and knowing what you need is the other side to that. Sometimes you mentioned before that sometimes you need to have a block of chocolate and sit in front of Netflix, and sometimes that is a perfectly healthy behavior or response to what you're going through.
Definitely.
It's not a maybe sustainable thing that you should defer to every time you feel bad, because if that becomes our default system, then before long we're turning to that every time we feel a negative emotion.
Habits are just systems. We talk about systems a lot. Systems and habits interchangeable. So here's the quote in terms of the comparison trap. And I screenshot way too much stuff on my phone. I've just realized I've just scrolled back through 700 photos. It's like 3 days. We're prone to assuming brilliance and organization in others, but we keep our own chaos in intimate focus. We don't realize that our chaos is universal. Everyone is just throwing shit at a wall and hoping it sticks. Like the imposter syndrome is such an important thing to understand, is that, some people look at my life or what I do with Virtus and things like that and say, well, like everything's going so well, or you've got your shit together or whatever. I doubt what we're doing at Virtus, and I doubt what I'm doing personally every single day. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but I think it's important for everyone to understand that the people who you put on your pedestal, the people I look up to locally, when we dive into it and talk about how they're going, they're trying to figure it out just like everyone else is. And I think it's important to know that everyone's, like you said, a different stage of their journey. Everyone's learning the same lessons in different ways. But I think the mental health conversation, and to kind of swing it back around, is just to understand that your problems are both individual and universal at the same time. You're dealing with your own shit, and it doesn't there's no point looking at someone else who's maybe struggling more or in a worse place and going, oh, they've got it worse. Sure, that perspective helps, but it doesn't mean you can't feel your feelings and accept that, yeah, this does suck.
Yes, and that's another thing worth saying, is that it's okay to not feel okay. And I know that's like maybe a phrase that's thrown around quite a bit now, but negative emotions are normal. I think having a negative relationship with negative emotions isn't a good thing. Like, we need to know and understand that negative emotions are normal. Everyone feels them. We all feel sadness and anger and jealousy and to a sense loneliness. The key, I think, and this is my own personal experience, because I think I am someone who almost rejects negative emotions a bit. Like, I give the facade that everything's okay when I need to maybe express myself a little bit more. But I think the key is just to have this self-awareness to recognize what you're feeling, recognize that it's okay to feel that way, and express yourself the way that you need to, and then bring yourself back around to cultivating those positive emotions. Whether that's then connecting yourself with other people or sharing with someone, whether it's going for a long walk or sitting and meditating, just standing out in the sun and taking a big breath.
Just get your mate Marie Kondo. Is that her name?
Marie Kondo.
Ask, what brings you joy?
Does it? Yeah.
Does it bring you joy? We did a connection and mindfulness session with a bunch of the Vertis family the other week, and the finishing thing was, what are the 20 things you're grateful for? Just write them down and stick it on the fridge. So when you are feeling those negative feelings, feel them, but then know that there's a way out of that hole. Not necessarily always a hole, but there's a way out of that hole by looking or paying attention to what you do love, what you do appreciate, what you are grateful for. So in terms of for anyone that feels like they don't know where to start, I have two suggestions for you. Suggestion one is writing a list of all the things you love to do / are grateful for, and do everything you can to fill your days with those things. Second thing is find someone who you look up to, and go, what do you do for X? What do you do to cultivate mindfulness? What do you do to feel better? What do you do to shift away from the negativity on social media? Because again, everyone, like Coop said before, everyone's got their own practices. Everyone's got their own way they deal with their mental health. But if you don't have the practices currently, steal someone else's schedule and then tweak it as you go to fit yourself. A really simple, and it's just because it's sitting right in front of me, but a really simple example I come back to is my journaling practice. Is I tried 50 things before I kind of cultivated a way that worked. You've got one that's completely different to mine, but they both work for us. And I'm sure if anyone wanted to cultivate a journaling practice, they could start with yours on mine, and they'd end up somewhere in the middle or somewhere that's got mixes of both. And it's almost like the best business advice is find someone who's doing what you want to do and go learn off them. It's the same thing from a physical health point of view. It's the same thing from a mental health point of view. Yes, you're going to be different. Yes, you're going to have your own, there's going to be nuance in how you look after yourself, but you'll learn more by going that way than going, oh, I've got to do this on my own. I've got to cultivate this on my own.
Yep. That's awesome.
Come join the Vertis family. Will help. I promise.
Yes. That might be a cool way to finish.
Before we do finish, we have talked about this conversation. This is like, there's no way we can touch on everything mental health in 1,000 episodes of this podcast. So
it's a big conversation.
So to reiterate what we said at the start, Lifeline Australia, 13 11 14 is the number. beyond blue, lean into it. There's an immense amount of resources. We talked about this with some, Pulsey, around episode 100 with Pulsey and Rick Mirabella. We talked about mental health from Moo's own experiences, which is incredibly valuable to hear him be vulnerable enough to talk about his experiences. Love that man. He's a king. Tommy Curtis and I talked about Are You OK Day 100 episodes ago, but it's there, and I think it's a really valuable episode. So there's lots of resources here, but there's an immense amount of resources out there.
Yeah. It's worth, and I agree. Those podcasts are awesome. And one of the other sort of projects that we did during the current pandemic was our marathon for mental health. Which we did in May. We ran 42 kilometers. We stopped at around 10 different cafes and coffee spots and interviewed a bunch of amazing people who have had experiences with mental health. And I guess we're still in the process of putting together that video.
It's a big project. I'll do it at some point.
Yes, but
what I realized from that is there are so many people that want to contribute and so many people that want to help. Like in a time where finances were, with the financial situation was tough for a lot of people. They didn't know what was happening. We raised, I think, $5,000 in, on like 10 days planning.
It was amazing.
And it was immense. So, everyone is going through something. Everyone suffers. I think it helps to know that. But I think the most important thing is that there's people there for you. And our community exists to promote love and care and get people strong as fuck in the meantime. All you've got to do is lean on the people around you, and the help is there. So don't ever feel like you are alone. Yeah.
And the last thing that I want to say is maybe a call to action for everyone. And that's to reach out to your friends. Ask them how they are, and ask them from a genuine place. That is, because I know that you all truly care about your friends, and asking how they are, asking how they truly are, and using empathy to understand where they're coming from, and engage in a conversation around this is just going to move us all forward in a positive way. And be kind to yourselves. Give yourselves a bit of love, or we will.
Can't wait for cuddles. Next week, what are we talking about?
Next week, episode 7, we're going to talk about community and accountability. We touched on community quite a lot here.
It's almost as if we pre-planned these 10 episodes to flow into one another. It's magical.
That is bizarre.
It's like the river of life. A man never stands in the same river twice, for he is not the same man and it is not the same river.
Or is swimming and he's not standing.
See you next week, team.
Sorry for that awful joke. Catch ya.